by Oscar Ross at the Goodis Goldberg Soren advertising agency in Toronto. The idea was incredibly simple, but I never forgot it. Picture this. It was a billboard with one corner of it actually peeling off and flapping in the wind. All it said was, "Quick, the Elmer's glue." So smart, so visually arresting, so memorable. It taught me something. It showed me that the medium itself could be the idea. The fact Oscar Ross used the actual paper on the billboard as part of the idea was an epiphany to me. Many years later, I took that lesson to heart. A group of nuns in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario called my company and said they had a branding problem. Needless to say, I was intrigued. When I met with the nuns, they were smart, savvy, and knew exactly what they needed. They said that since they don't wear habits anymore, they had no visibility, or, as they said, we lost our branding. They wanted an advertising campaign that spoke to women who were feeling a spiritual calling. The ads were to say the nuns of Sault Ste. Marie were still out there and ready to talk. The transit company in the Soo had donated some interior ad space in their buses. So we created an ad that said, "If you're looking for answers, you're looking in the right direction." But here's the thing. We wanted to put that ad on the ceiling of the buses, which the bus company promptly refused to do because they had never done it before. We said, "But it's possible." They said, "We don't do that." We said, "But it's possible." They finally relented. So when bus passengers looked up, meaning the big up, they saw a message from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Sault Ste. Marie. The ceiling became part of the message, inspired by Oscar Ross and the Elmer's Glue billboard. And one more lesson here. That ceiling ad only existed because we persisted, proving one of my favorite maxims: dare and the world will always yield. Everybody has major influences in their life. The Beatles were influenced by Buddy Holly. Elvis was influenced by Dean Martin. Beethoven kept a picture of Bach on his desk. You begin by imitating your heroes, then slowly, surely, you develop your own style. As someone once said, you may drink Gatorade, but what you sweat is your own. My advertising sensibilities were certainly forged by some mighty inspirations. A snowplow ad from my childhood, a master class in sound effects courtesy of a coyote and a roadrunner, a profound lesson in casting from Dick Orkin, looking up in awe at Stan Freberg's big thinking, seeing a corner of a billboard flapping in the wind. A boss once said my ads were like The Far Side. He meant it as a criticism. I couldn't have been prouder. That slightly twisted Larson-esque humor had seeped into my cells. There comes a time in your life when you should tip your hat to your heroes, the ones we're lucky enough to meet and the ones who influence us from afar. To all those inspirational people, I say thank you. You definitely had me under your influence. I'm Terry O'Reilly. This episode was recorded in the Terrestream. Producer, Debbie O'Reilly. Sound engineer, Keith Oman. Theme music by Ari Posner and Ian Lefevre. Digital content producer, Sydney O'Reilly. If you liked this episode, you might also enjoy an episode titled Advertising Alumni, Season 3, Episode 11. You'll find it in our archives wherever you download your podcasts. See you next week.
Under the Influence.
All meat, no filler.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg. It's a regular part of life for half the population. But Dr. Jen Gunter says there's still much we get wrong about menstruation, and she's out to change that.
I want people able to talk about periods the way they talk about elbows or a sore knee or whatever. And I want everybody to know what's happening to their body.
The myths and politics of menstruation on the Sunday Magazine with Pia Chattopadhyay. Sunday morning at 9:30 in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 22 degrees with overcast skies in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A major plan to reshape Winnipeg's downtown had a hearing at City Hall today. The plan is supported by many downtown advocates, but as the CBC's Cameron McLean reports, one councillor is raising concerns about its effects on vulnerable people.
Planners at the City of Winnipeg have spent the last year working on Centre Plan 2050. Today, members of the public were invited to a hearing at the Property and Development Committee to share their thoughts. Representatives of organizations like the Downtown and Exchange District Business Improvement Zone spoke in support of the plan. It includes a proposal to waive millions of dollars in building fees to encourage construction of more housing. But Point Douglas Councillor Vivian Santos warned planners to consider how streetscaping design can affect homeless people. She says some elements meant to deter crime create a hostile environment. She encouraged the city to make sure the plan is inclusive of everyone who lives downtown. The committee will vote on the plan later today. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg Police and the Tactical Unit have now left the 400 block of Mountain Avenue. They had been there since 8:30 this morning, and we expect to get more information about what went on from the police later on. But for now, all they say is they were there for a weapons and firearms investigation. Winnipeg's mayor says it could cost the city $3 million to bring the lowest paid workers up to a living wage. But the union representing workers says it's worth it. A report going to Executive Policy Committee examines what it would cost to raise the wages of 516 city workers earning minimum wage. QP 500 President Gort Delbridge says it's something the city should implement.
They should be leading by example. We don't want to be living in a society that is having to access food banks and are living in poverty. We want working class Winnipeggers to be able to contribute to society and live with some dignity.
Mayor Scott Gillingham says wages should be negotiated in collective bargaining and not on the city council floor. The report is expected to be received as information. The town of Hinton, Alberta has declared a health crisis because it doesn't have enough family doctors. It's down to 8 GPs after half of what's needed for a population of 10,000. The town's mayor says the municipality is looking at using $500,000 of its own funding to keep a clinic open, even though health care is a provincial responsibility. At least 2 people are dead after Hurricane Beryl brought damaging winds and rain to Jamaica last night. Now the U.S. National Hurricane Center says the storm is moving away from the Cayman Islands and toward Mexico. The sound of people on the Mexican eastern coast boarding up windows in preparation of Beryl's arrival. While the hurricane has weakened to a Category 3 storm, winds will still be as high as 195 kilometers an hour. There's also a threat of heavy rain and storm surges. Beryl should hit Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula sometime early tomorrow. The ballot box is open for just a few more hours in the UK general election. A political shakeup is almost guaranteed, with polls predicting the ruling Conservatives could see their party's worst defeat in history. Here's Anna Cunningham with your details.
Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer were out early to cast their votes. Since the snap election was called in May, centre-left Labour leader Starmer has campaigned on one word: change. Conservative leader Sunak ended his campaign warning of the dangers of a Labour majority. Since Brits last went to the polls voting in Boris Johnson's government with a majority in 2019, there have been 2 other Prime Ministers, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, neither elected by the public.
It's a threshold moment in our history. We're all facing quite troublesome times out there.
I am hopeful that Keir Starmer will enact some of the policies he's been talking about, and I think he is the best person at the moment to lead this country.
Despite major issues such as the economy, immigration and healthcare, this election is being seen as a real judgment on 14 years of Conservative-led rule. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has authorized a team of negotiators to resume ceasefire talks, but Netanyahu's office insists Israel will only end the war after achieving all of its objectives, including destroying Hamas's military and returning all hostages held in Gaza. The development comes after Hamas submitted a new response to a ceasefire proposal endorsed by the United States. And the International Swimming Federation says its executive director has been ordered to testify as a witness in a U.S. criminal investigation. It's looking into the doping tests of 23 Chinese swimmers. They tested positive for a banned heart medication in 2021. But World Aquatics still allowed them to compete at the Tokyo Olympic Games a few months later. Chinese officials blamed the results on food contamination. The investigation comes 3 weeks before the start of the Paris Olympics, where 11 of the same Chinese swimmers are expected to compete. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or use the CBC News app. In Winnipeg, sunny today, but a chance of showers, a high of 24 degrees. In Brandon, a chance of showers or storms, a high of 25. Also in Dauphin, we have a chance of storms or showers with a high of 25. And in western Manitoba, conditions today are favorable for the development of funnel clouds. Keep an eye out. In Flin Flon, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of 26. Thompson, partly cloudy, a high of 23. And in Churchill, a chance of showers today and a high of 19 degrees. You're listening to CBC.
Hello, Manitoba. Thanks for joining us today for Radio Noon. I'm Janet Stewart. Today in our calling conversation, we're asking, what should every cottage guest know before they walk through a swinging screen door? And cottage guests, how do you make sure you'll be invited back? Tell us your stories, and we want to hear about your good visits and your not so good visits after the 12:30 news and weather. Up first today, breaking ground. A 24-unit transitional housing space is now officially under construction in Brandon. It will help people transition from incarceration or homelessness. The John Howard Society of Brandon, in partnership with Westman Youth for Christ, has been waiting to start construction for 2 years. The CBC's Chelsea Kemp was at yesterday's groundbreaking ceremony yesterday. She spoke with John Howard Society's director, Ross Robinson.
How much has been raised for this project so far?
How much has been raised? $10.6 million.
Been kind of like a race against inflation?
Well, inflation has had a part to play in it as well. And other things just, for me, some new things that hadn't been factored in. But inflation is a big part where every time we thought we had it pegged, it came in higher, for sure. This is a project that is intended for anybody. And I'm really wanting to bring the community in to break down the barrier, to make sure that this isn't just something, a standalone, where something goes on in there. We don't know what it is. We want the city to be part of this. Everybody have a role to play. If they've got a skill they want to bring in, some cultural help that they want to bring, some spiritual help they want to bring, if they want to help somebody learn how to budget, how to write a resume, we're going to have some professional people there, but somebody going to need some extra assistance. And when we break down those barriers and build those bonds, that's going to make everything more successful. Because if they feel alienated, if people are in there and feeling alienated, they're going to be, when they're ready to go, they're not going to feel part of. And we want people to feel part of it. It's family might be cliche, but that's the feeling that I'm hoping to get here.
How do you do that?
it's a lot of relationships, right? A lot of different relationships, because sometimes you don't click with everybody. You know what family's like. But the idea that if we can have the right mix of people through who are engaged in kindness and patience and understand that all the time that they invest into this spot, all the resources they put into this spot are going to come back in buckets in the future. So that's what it's all about. My end goal really is to have a mentoring process where people have been through, have moved on, are then able to come back in and use their experience and strength and hope to the people who are just newly arrived.
And the idea that it's not only housing, it's employment.
Yeah, well, the goal is employment. Certainly, we've been in discussions with a couple agencies that need a solid source of individuals to help them out. And here, we've got the ability that they can have a place to drop off, a place to pick up. Maybe they get a bag lunch to take with them. So all those challenges that they have as people starting to start off, we're going to take care of that. They're going to have a good breakfast. They're going to have a bag lunch to take with them. They're going to have a place where they can lay their head down and be ready for the next day work. And that's a big challenge when you're living on the street.
And it seems like there's just so many barriers of access. It's been 2 years to get this project. It's getting people in the doors. How do y'all keep going?
I keep the vision in mind. But really one of the big things is feeling the support. It's interesting, right? At times where I feel like, this is all on my shoulders, somebody else steps up and says, we can help you with this, right? The federal government with their money. The province then several months later with their money. The city of Brandon with their money, right? And people just going, we want this to work. And it's like, okay, I'm just, if I'm kind of the director of the conduit for it, that's great. But I know it's everybody's efforts together. That's what keeps me going.
Do you find, has the design changed much since the inception of the idea?
Not hugely. What we had to do is we had to reduce the size, cost-cutting measures. Hallways had to be bringing a little bit shorter. Some of the fixtures and fittings that we wanted on it, we had to cut that out. But I wanted to work with Samson Engineering to make sure that it still retained some of the things that make it look like a home. So there's going to be some exposed wood. There's going to be some other things that makes it a little bit nicer, right? And the heating and cooling are going to be such that it's going to be a comforting place for people.
That was Ross Robinson, Executive Director of the John Howard Society of Brandon, speaking with CBC's Chelsea Kemp. Construction of that 24-unit transitional housing space is expected to be completed by June of 2025. You can read more on the story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
When we see Team Canada on the world stage, we're witnessing pure greatness. What we don't see is their struggle. We don't see Maggie McNeil navigating her anxiety, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander getting cut from his high school team, or Ellie Black hearing she's just too old to compete. What we don't see makes us who we are. We're all bravely facing the odds in our lives, and our bravery is our victory.
Need to hear Michael J. Fox there voicing that promo for us. It is 12:12 here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. You're listening to Radio Noon, and we're grateful you're here. Right now, let's hear a little music from his album Lady Boots. This is Mitchell McCoons with Summertime.
Holding on to something, always something better behind me in the rear view mirror, in just the spot that I can't see. Guess I gotta let it go. Waking up to ashes, maybe a bit of dirt. Either way, it means that I've put in good old bad. I'm not trying to be nobody's best friend. I'd write my statement, but I just don't got a pen. I'm not trying to look for greener grass. Spring rains are coming my way and the winter kill has passed. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast. Say it's all in season, so why I feel like this. Little pill or a tanning bed is what I need to fix this thinking mind. I'm not trying to be nobody's best friend. I'd write my statement, but I just don't got a pen. I'm not trying to look for greener grass. Spring rains are coming my way and the winter kill has passed. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast. Trying to look for greener grass. Spring rains are coming my way and the winter kill has passed. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast. Oh, summertime couldn't get here too fast.
Summertime by Mitchell McCoons. Summertime couldn't get here too fast. Neither could that steam-powered locomotive built in 1930 that is currently chugging its way to Winnipeg. What an adventure the Empress steam locomotive has been on, right down to Mexico City and back to the prairies. We're going to hear from a man who's been on that journey next. Also coming up today, we're going to talk about cottage etiquette. Not everyone's lucky enough to make it out to cottage country. If you are, what are the things you should remember to be a good guest and make sure you're invited back? If you're a cottage owner, what lessons have you learned? What advice do you have? And what about you, cottage guests? How do you make sure that you've been a good guest? Join our call-in conversation after the 12:30 news and weather. And we'll have the editor of Cottage Life magazine joining us as our special guest. Right now, we have to take a look at that weather advisory that's sitting in effect for southwestern Manitoba right now. The advisory is a statement saying that conditions are favorable for the development of funnel clouds. So do watch the skies. If you see anything that looks threatening that could develop into a funnel cloud, be sure to seek shelter right away. Riley Lachuk will be back at 12:30 with a full look at your Manitoba forecast. He joins us every day at that time. This Saturday, the Empress, a lovingly restored steam locomotive built back in 1930, will pull to a stop on Jarvis Avenue in Winnipeg. That will be its final stop on the CPKC Southern Final Spike Tour. The cross-continent trip was to celebrate and draw attention to the merger of two historic railway companies, the Canadian Pacific Railway and the Kansas City Southern. Terry Kuna is a spokesperson for what's now called CPKC. He's been traveling on the Empress since she left Calgary at the end of April and joins us now by Zoom. Hi, Terry. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, good morning.
So what is it like to travel on this train?
Well, it's been an incredible journey that I've been very fortunate to participate in, and I know having been to many communities across North America, there's a lot of excitement, and we're very much looking forward to continuing to see that excitement here Saturday in Winnipeg.
Now, you're joining us by Zoom. You're clearly not on the train at this moment. Where have we reached you?
That's correct. I'm in Calgary, just here in our headquarters in Calgary. Had the opportunity to prepare myself before I take off to Winnipeg and join the team Friday and Saturday in Winnipeg for the event that's taking place from 12 to 4.
It's quite a story behind the Empress and her restoration. Tell us that story.
Yeah, it's been a lot of hard work and dedication made by a very dedicated group of individuals. It was 8 individuals who worked very diligently for 2 solid years in for the work they did in restoring the Empress and getting it back into operating and ensuring that it could safely make the journey. It's over 9,000 miles from Calgary down to Mexico City and back. So it was an incredible amount of work and dedication, but quite a lot of passion involved by those 8 individuals to be able to showcase the Empress and its mystique and all the history involved, as you mentioned, built in 1930. And we're just excited to be able to show that to everybody in Winnipeg on Saturday.
What kind of reception has the locomotive received when it's pulled into different stops?
Oh, it's been wonderful. We've had thousands of individuals come out at each of the stops that we've made, ranging in all ages, from young children all the way to some individuals who were around who actually had worked at CP back when we still operated steam locomotives. So it's been great to see some of those individuals come out and share some of their history and passion for our history with our crews who are there, sharing their knowledge and passion for steam locomotives and as trains in general. So it's been a wonderful turnout, and we're expecting it to continue here on Saturday in Winnipeg.
So the train went all the way from leaving Calgary end of April. It was Moose Jaw. Then where did you go?
Oh, we've gone from Calgary to Moose Jaw, through St. Paul down to Davenport, continuing down south to Shreveport and then Laredo and then Mexico City. And now it's continuing its journey all the way back, and it's making its way back into Canada in time to be in Winnipeg for Saturday's event. And then we'll continue its journey home to Calgary, where it'll conclude this wonderful nearly 2-month journey across 3 nations, showcasing our history as one new unified rail company, as you mentioned, bringing the 2 wonderful organizations, CP and Kansas City Southern, together to celebrate our 1-year anniversary.
So you mentioned to me when we spoke on the phone earlier that you have been a passenger for part of the journey. What does it feel like to be on the train?
It's a very unique experience, having been able to be part of it and being able to visit many communities. And it's wonderful just to be able to look out the window and see the landscape behind you, and just being able to hear the engine roar and be part of that great experience. And I'm very fortunate to been able to spend a small portion of my time on the train, and very fortunate. And there's a lot of kudos for the men and women on the train right now who've made this journey and traveled thousands of miles across 3 nations. So very wonderful experience, and I know our team is very excited to share it.
Terry,
You know what? I wish I could share a story with you, Janet. I don't have anything as fascinating or as wonderful as the team on site who spent 2 full months on the train, living on it for the 2 months, and having to experience the thousands of miles they've been able to travel and the thousands of individuals they've been able to see. So,
well, that's it. There's a human story here. There's something about steam trains, I think, steam locomotives that just connects with the hearts of so many people in their imaginations.
Yes, that is correct. And we've been able to share that and hear that from, as I mentioned, from many of the individuals who've had the opportunity to come and see us in each of these stops. And you definitely get to appreciate a lot of the passion that individuals have for this, not just steam locomotives, but trains in general, and the work that went into building our nation and how the important role trains had in that. And we're just excited to continue to share that enthusiasm and see it firsthand with the individuals who come and join us at each of these stops.
So Saturday is the final stop. You're here in Winnipeg. Please explain what's going to happen when the train arrives in Winnipeg Saturday.
Yeah, you bet. So we'll be there from 12 to 4. Members of the public, of course, are encouraged to come out, take pictures, speak to our crew members who are there to share their knowledge and history and the work they've done to bring this wonderful locomotive into operation. But also for those with children, we'll have our puffer belly there as well, offering train rides, and we'll have a museum there as well for individuals to come and see and read about our history, both of CP Rail and Kansas City Southern. And of course, a lot of excitement from other rail fans. They're just enjoying themselves, getting to see the train, hear its steam engine as it roars with the whistle, and being able to take those pictures and just taking in a wonderful Saturday afternoon in Winnipeg.
And again, it's at the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Yard at Jarvis Street. What happens, Jarvis Avenue, I should say, what happens to the train next? Does it go into storage or to a museum?
That's a great question. Once it concludes in Winnipeg, we'll definitely bring it back to Calgary and then ensure it's brought back up to restored properly. And what the next steps look like, it's a great question. There's been so much excitement and enthusiasm for this 2 months of touring that we're still curious to see what the path forward will look like. But following its trip in Winnipeg, it'll be coming back to Calgary.
All right. Well, Terry Kuna, thanks so much for taking time today to tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Terry Kuna is a spokesperson for the CPKC. The tour's final stop is in Winnipeg this Saturday from noon to 4 p.m. If you Google Final Spike Steam Tour, you'll actually find on the CPKC website a video that shows the train and shows a train like it in decades ago traveling along. It's quite exceptional. The final stop, noon to 4 Saturday. The public can gather at the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Yard, 949 Jarvis Avenue. That's by McPhillips, I believe, to witness a piece of railway history up close.
In 2007, TV network CBS dropped 40 kids in the middle of the New Mexico desert as part of a brand new reality show. And if this sounds like Lord of the Flies to you, it was meant to.
We were going to prove to the world that we could make a better society than adults could.
I'm Josh Gwynn, and I want to know what this wild TV experiment was really about. Split Screen, Kid Nation, a 6-part podcast from CBC. Available now.
It is 12:27. Dave Woody wears a lot of hats. He's a TV producer, a podcaster, a voiceover artist. He's also this songwriter. He wrote this song about keeping everything together called Ducks in a Row.
Changing around me, and I got nowhere to go. I see you carving your own way. You got your ducks in a row. Whoa. Who would have thought we'd be frozen? We'd have to stand still in time. But if you want to get out there, you gotta wait in the line. So if you could agree, it doesn't matter to me. I think it's time to keep moving. We've got a long way to go. Time to keep moving. We've got a long way to go. So when you're searching for answers on ways that you can outlast, sometimes you just gotta wonder what's best to leave in the past. Whoa. Ooh. look for it all. You just make the call. We'll get what you need. You can set yourself free.
Dave Woody with Ducks in a Row. It is almost 12:30. It is time to open the phone lines. We want to hear from you about cottage etiquette. What is it you wish every cottage guest, every cottage owner knew? Join our call-in conversation, 204-780-0893. If you want to text us, you can do that to 204-588-7355. Right now, the time is 12:30.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 24 degrees with overcast skies in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. We could see funnel clouds in southwestern Manitoba today. We have a weather advisory for the Brandon and Dauphin areas. Conditions are favorable for funnel cloud development. And if you see a funnel cloud, prepare to take shelter. They can come on with no warning. Weather specialist Riley Laychuk will be along shortly with all your details. Today, Winnipeggers could offer their thoughts of Centre Plan 2050. The plan proposes waiving millions of dollars in building fees to encourage construction of more housing in the downtown core. At City Hall, those advocating for the development of downtown spoke in favor of the plan, including the downtown and Exchange District business improvement zones. But Point Douglas councillor Vivian Santos warned planners to consider how streetscaping design can affect homeless people. She says some elements meant to deter crime create a hostile environment. Joe Biden heads into the American July 4th holiday, insisting he is the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump in the November presidential election. This after spending the week answering questions about his age and his competency. Steve Futterman has more.
A week ago tonight,
with dealing with everything we have to do with
Joe Biden's debate debacle. A week later, Democrats remain in a debate of their own, whether Biden should drop out of the presidential race. Yesterday, he met with Democratic governors at the White House, Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
It was candid. We were honest about the concerns that we were hearing from people.
And Biden made clear to campaign workers yesterday that he's in the race to stay. During a radio interview, the debate performance was still topic one.
I screwed up. I made a mistake. That's 90 minutes on stage. Look at what I've done in 3.5 years.
A new Wall Street Journal poll shows 80% of voters feel Biden is too old to run again. So far, no major Democrat has publicly called for Biden to drop out. If that happens, it could change the dynamics. Meanwhile, Biden is set to take part in a 1-hour TV interview tomorrow. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And finally, you're being cautioned to be very careful around water after heavy rain left high water levels and strong currents. Reports of a woman in the water near Assiniboine Park Bridge started coming in just after 10 last night. Police say she was being carried down the river on the current. The Winnipeg Fire paramedic crews managed to pull her from the water around Ferry Road and Park Boulevard North. She was taken to hospital in stable condition. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks so much, Matt Humphrey.
Back soon.
Our weather specialist, Riley Laychuk, joins us now. What a day.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be another active one, Janet.
Yes, it is.
But warm. And I have, if you like hot temperatures, I've got some good news on the horizon for you, too.
That's good.
A few little teases for you as we head into sort of the afternoon hours here. I want to start with a weather statement we have in place. Weather advisory, funnel clouds possible today, or some weak lands about tornadoes. I don't mean that there's going to be a tornado. I don't mean to scare you or anything like that. It's just an advisory that we could see the development of some funnel clouds throughout the afternoon today. A little bit unstable, considering that we do have a risk of thunderstorms, and it's hot, and it's a little bit humid out there too. So it's more so just a be on the lookout, keep your eyes to the sky sort of deal this afternoon. Satellite and radar, not a lot to see at the moment. There's just sort of a mix of sun and clouds across southern Manitoba once again today. Few little cells of rain and some lightning as well, particularly sort of on the south side of Duck Mountain Provincial Park and into the Lake Manitoba Narrows area, seeing a few little blips, very, very isolated in nature. And that's kind of what we're looking at really across the south through the day today. Northern Manitoba, into the sunshine, by and large, a little bit of cloud into far northern parts of the province, like Brochet to Dooley Lake. Maybe a couple of showers this afternoon, but by and large, we're looking at actually a pretty warm and mainly sunny day across the province. As we advance into the afternoon, we do see the potential once again for some isolated showers or risk of an isolated thunderstorm throughout the day today. More so centered west of Winnipeg into the Westman and the Parkland region again today. So I wouldn't be surprised by the time we got to say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we did see some severe thunderstorm watches popping up in the west again today. Slim chance you could see a few rumbles of thunder here in the south, at least through the afternoon. That clears out through the early evening, and then we're looking at a very sunny Friday ahead and a mainly sunny Saturday ahead for most of us. Although we could see some scattered showers as we get into the day on Saturday and into Sunday. Thunderstorm risk, like I mentioned, most of that centered sort of west of Winnipeg, south of Dauphin to the U.S. and Saskatchewan borders. Could see some isolated thunderstorms this afternoon, potential for some hail up to the size of quarters. Wind gusts up to 90 kilometers an hour, downpours, and that potential for a funnel cloud or a very weak land spout tornado through the afternoon today. Otherwise, temperature is pretty seasonal for this time of the year. 25 in both Winnipeg and Emerson this afternoon. 23 is what I have for Brandon, Verdun, and Portage la Prairie. 23 as well in Thompson this afternoon. A few showers starting to move into the Hudson Bay coast area, so could see a few showers in Churchill this afternoon. 26 is what I have for Friday, 27 for Saturday, 25s and 26s into early next week. And looking a little bit far out on the horizon, Janet, I've got a 30 in the forecast for next Thursday.
There you go. So more humidity and more bad hair days for me.
More bad hair days on the way for all of us.
Why am I not a toque girl? If I just had gotten into the toque fashion, I'd have been fine.
I know.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're looking at some warm temperatures coming up.
All right. Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks very much. Riley Lachuk will be back on Up to Speed today, and he'll be hosting CBC Winnipeg News at 6 tonight, which, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well anytime you like. Hello to everyone watching us on YouTube today. It is summer, and summer is a fun time to visit friends and family. If you're lucky enough to have someone in your circle who owns a cottage and be invited there, or to own one yourself, you know how privileged you are. But as fun as it sounds to have guests over or to go stay at someone's cottage, misunderstandings can arise. So cottage owners, we want to hear from you. Help out your neighbors and friends today with your best advice. What do you expect from your guests? And guests, how do you plan to be considerate during your stay? Time to help others avoid any issues you've experienced. Please share your stories with us now at 204-780-0893. We don't have to use names if you're worried about embarrassing someone or yourself. 204-780-0893. And if, as much as I'd love to chat with you, if you prefer to text, our text number is 204-588-7355. I am grateful today that Michelle Kelly joins us for our conversation. She's the editor of Cottage Life magazine. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us on Zoom.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Janet.
How often do you hear about tension between cottage owners and their guests?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of funny. A lot of people who don't have a cottage think of, cottaging and going to the cottage on the weekend as, relaxation, and you kick back, you enjoy the water and sun and food and drink, etc. And of course, that is true. Like, it is fun to go to the cottage and there is a lot of relaxation time. But what people can't really often appreciate until they're in the situation of ownership is how much work a cottage takes. It's a I always say it's a house in the middle of the woods that you leave for almost the entire year just to, be at the mercy of the forest, essentially. So, we live in Canada. It can be pretty brutal conditions, even for, houses. So you have to do a lot of work to maintain that house and just to keep it standing. And also, I think the other side of that is when you're entertaining, it's not often at home will you entertain a friend for a weekend. People will come for dinner or they'll come for coffee, but coming for an entire weekend and maybe bringing their kids and their dog, and it's a whole other situation. You have to feed them, you have to entertain them, or you might feel you have to. So being a cottage guest is its own sort of, there's tricky landmines that you may not be aware of, as the same is for cottage hosts, I would say.
Well, that's why it's important that we're having this conversation today, because some of those things might be awkward conversations for you to have with your friends. Patricia joins us now. Hey, Patricia, thank you for calling Radio Noon.
Yes, hello. Sorry, hold on. If I got a bit of laryngitis. If you're going to a cottage where there's small children, stop by a Dollarama or dollar store and pick up some little items like plasticine or balloons or stickers or coloring books and bring them. And the kids will just love you for it, and so will the parents. Okay?
What an easy tip. Patricia, that's brilliant. Do you have any other wisdom to share with us?
Remember you're a guest and go by their rules, not your rules, because they want the kids in bed by 7. You try to keep that. You can say maybe let them stay up a bit longer. And I could think of several things, but I'm sure there's others. Okay?
Have you been a guest many times at someone else's cottage?
Both. I've been a guest, and I had a cottage for 30-some years.
For 30-some years. And what stands out for you when you think of those years as an owner?
Well, some of my friends, when I worked with, they said, why would you ever have a cottage? It's just another house to clean. Well, it's got an outhouse, and you tell people not to bring your curlers or electric things, but they still do. And we don't have reception very well. We have to go to the neighbor who has... she gets contact with the tower at Manaki, and respect that, because they get so angry that they can't get, what's wrong with my phone? How come I can't get reception? Well, that's the way it is. And boy, you see them suffer with it. But I have so many wonderful memories of cabin. We had an outdoor fire. We did hikes, went blueberry picking, all kinds of wonderful, wonderful memories. In fact, I had the best long weekend I've had in years. Everybody came, my 3 children, my 3 grandchildren, and I kept saying, how can it get better than this? This is wonderful.
What was it that made it so wonderful? I mean, just you had people you love there, clearly.
Yes, and I had them all, and the one daughter who usually doesn't participate at all really participated. I go for a nap every afternoon. The others went fishing, and the youngest grandchild and my oldest daughter, I couldn't believe it, because they sort of reestablished their relationship.
Oh, how
because
lovely.
This girl, the oldest one, keeps everything to herself and is not interested in that. And it was just so joyful to see everybody interact, playing games, playing cards. My youngest daughter could skunk me on anything I played, my youngest grandchild. And my youngest daughter was such a great hostess.
Well, there you go. There's a key. They allowed you to go for a nap.
I always go for a nap.
and everybody participated. Patricia, thank you so much.
Okay, well, enjoy it. I really had I have great memories of my cottage.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, we're so grateful that you shared some of them with us today. What about you, Manitoba? You're listening to Patricia's stories. What stories come up for you? What memories do you have of your cottage or of being a guest or being a host? 204-780-0893. If you would like to text us, you can do that at 204-588-7355. Now, Michelle Kelly, when you were listening to Patricia, I heard you chuckle a couple of times. What was it she was saying that struck a chord with you?
You know what Patricia's saying there, it's so resonant for me because I hear it all the time is, cottages really being a place where everyone's together. And I think that, again, is a unique thing because typically, families, once the children have grown into adults and have their own children, there aren't, again, a lot of opportunities for weekends spent together, especially at the same place, especially generation after generation. So it's actually quite special. And what she's saying there is that she had everyone together. And I think that's pretty great and very common. I think another thing she touched on that made me chuckle is people thinking their phone is broken when they can't connect to the internet, which is hilarious because, of course, we're so used to being connected all the time. And I feel like it's an advantage to be at a cottage where you don't have connectivity because there's so few places in the world anymore where that's the case. And, just embracing that and, back to guests, if you're a guest and you're at a place and there is no Wi-Fi or there might not even be connection to a cell tower, go with it. That's the surefire way to not be asked back if you complain about something like that. So I would say that that's kind of the thing that you want, and maybe you lean into a little bit when you're faced with it instead of, complaining about it, which is harder for some people than others, particularly I think about my teenage children. But yeah, that made me laugh that she identified that, because it's definitely a thing.
You mentioned earlier on how much work it is to have a cottage, how much work there is to be done. Is that something in terms of etiquette? Should a guest come prepared to lend a hand? Should they ask, hey, can I help?
Yes, all of those things. So I think it's not uncommon to be a guest and ask to pick up a paintbrush or a hammer or whatever the job is. And that's kind of the fun of it too. That's doing something together all day, and then, being able to really relax in the afternoon or the evening. That's a real cottage thing. That's part of the culture, right? There's a big DIY culture at the lake, and you should be prepared to embrace that, because it can actually be really fun. I think some guests will not even offer, but you should always offer. And some hosts won't let you do anything, and that's okay. You just should really, pitch in where you can. And if you're not handy and you don't want to pick up a paintbrush, you can always offer to do meals, or offer to bring a meal, or help with meal cleanup, or help with setting the table, or, as Patricia led on to, entertain the kids if there's any around. So there's lots of ways that you can sort of pitch in to make the weekend easier for your hosts.
We received a text from someone who suggests also that gas is an issue, especially if there's a boat involved. I'm guilty of this myself. I have friends with boats, and I love taking a ride on a boat. I just love it. But I had no concept of how expensive the fuel is.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to a guest about that?
Yeah, so this is actually a great point. There's, for one thing, going on a sunset cruise, or even in some cases getting to the cottage, because it might be boat access only, is one thing. But then when you get into cottage boats being used for recreation, the big thing being, oh, my kid wants to go tubing, or my kid wants to try water skiing, and there your host is kindly helping your kid get up on water skis, which can take some doing in some situations. That really burns a lot of gas. So that is a really good thing to be thoughtful about. Bring a gas card and, leave it on the kitchen table when you leave, because a lot of times that won't be, will probably be politely declined, but it is always appreciated. It is like, boating is an expensive pastime. And I think most hosts are happy to, do the sunset cruise, or of course to get you to the cottage. But then once it becomes an all day thing to be out on the water tubing or water skiing or what have you, it does get expensive. So being a guest who recognizes that and is sensitive to it is definitely a good idea.
You mentioned leaving the gas card, buying a gift card from your gas station and just leaving it there for them. Is subtlety the way to do it, or is this a discussion that people should just have? As a guest or as a host, is it okay to bring up, this is going to be expensive? How do we split the expenses?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we're Canadian, right? So we want to be as subtle and unobtrusive as possible, I suppose, part of it. But it also depends on your relationship. I mean, if you're talking to your brother, you might be saying it differently than you're talking to your neighbor, and it's the first time they've ever invited you. So, there's a certain amount of just using your common sense and navigating it in that way. But one thing I would say is, when it comes to food preparation, a mistake we always identify and kind of laugh about at the Cottage Life office is, don't bring a watermelon, because a watermelon is kind of a funny thing, right? You bring it, it's huge, and you cut it up and you think, oh, great, here, everyone, it's really nice, 3:00 on a sunny day to get a little snack of watermelon. Everyone's delighted. But then the next day, when it's time to go home, no one wants to bring half a watermelon home. And you sure don't want to leave it in the fridge for another week, because it's going to rot when you get there the next weekend. And that sort of illustrates something else, which is, if you are going to bring food, which is a great idea, work out with the host beforehand what it is you're going to bring. Because, we need to be really smart about the food that we use, because if you don't use it, you have to take it home. And there's all sorts of things that can happen with extra food around the cottage, including animals, which is, can be problematic. And, there might already be, the other joke we say at the office is there's always 6 jars of half-eaten salsa in the fridge at the end of the summer. And it's the same reason. People bring up a whole jar of salsa, eat a bit, put the cap on, and then the next week and the same thing happens. So just be thinking about, okay, well, if I'm going to bring burgers for Saturday night, is there ketchup? And working that out with the host beforehand. You might think you're doing a nice thing by just bringing all sorts of new condiments, but in fact, you're creating a problem you're not intending to. So, again, talking about it beforehand really helps.
That's great. And I love the watermelon thing. I really do. The first thing I thought of about the watermelon was it's a lot of work. Then somebody has to go chop it up. Here, hostess, go chop this.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Do you have a giant knife and a giant cutting board?
Right. And did you want to get them dirty right at this very moment? No, but
exactly.
Thinking of food. Great advice, Michelle Kelly. What advice do you have, folks listening? 2047 800893. Again, 2047800893. You can send us a text at 588-7355. It can be a lot of work. We know this from having a dinner party. Somebody tends to jump up and do the hostessing or the hosting. How much should a guest say, hey, no, you sit down, because you want your host to enjoy as well?
Good question. At every opportunity is the answer, I think. You're a guest. Remember your manners. You want to help out as much as possible, recognizing that it is a lot of work to host you and your family for a weekend. Help out as much as possible. The other thing I would say that is sometimes overlooked at the cottage, and this is really important, is don't complain. How'd you sleep is maybe the first question you get in the morning. Don't say the bed was lumpy. Don't say there was a mosquito in your ear. You say, oh, isn't it a wonderful thing to wake up here by the lake? No matter how the night went, I think that that's probably a really good approach if you're looking to get an invitation back, because you have to remember, this is your host's favorite place in the whole wide world. So every comment you make is cuts right to the heart. So you want to be as sensitive about that as possible, even if there was a mosquito buzzing in your ear all night long.
Welcome to the country, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you handle a situation if you've got a guest who isn't helping or did say something that hurt your feelings? Do you, what do you recommend in terms of diplomacy?
Well, I would say the first thing is it depends on who it is,
right?
And what kind of person you are. I'm kind of the person who'd say, hey, that hurt my feelings. But, that's not always possible, obviously. The biggest thing is don't have them back, I would say. But, make your expectations clear, too. I think that's fair in all sort of situations. If you're inviting someone, be clear about what your expectations are. Tell them, we don't flush the toilet, or we don't, because of the septic system. So we're really careful about the water. So tell them that instead of letting them make the mistake of a 15-minute shower, So I think having those kinds of expectations made super clear at the beginning is going to be helpful, and will kind of make it a better time for everyone. And again, just be mindful of the relationship that you have, and be careful about who you invite. I would say is a probably pretty good thing. You only have so few precious summer weekends, so you obviously want to be careful about who you share them with.
Is it okay for a host to set out a list of rules?
Yeah, it's funny. Over the years in the magazine and on cottagelife.com, we've often published sort of jokey rules of cottage hosting and being a cottage guest. And I say they're jokey because they're actually quite specific. And it doesn't hurt to sort of know some of them. I mentioned, the septic system and knowing about making sure that you're treating it very carefully, because some of them are old and creaky and they are very expensive to fix. So that's one thing. Another thing I sometimes talk about is how if someone asks you to bring beer, and I've seen it happen where someone will bring really cheap beer and then drink the local craft brew that's already in the fridge, and then they'll replace it with something that's not quite as good, which we're getting down to sort of the nitty gritty with that. But those are the kinds of things that people really notice, right? Because they have their favorite local craft beer. They want to have it on the dock at 4 p.m. The sun is shining and it's not there. And instead they're reaching for something that's maybe not their favorite. They may notice. So little things like that, I think, are, small, but can kind of become the thing that gets a little bit blown out of proportion.
We just received another text from a listener. Thank you so much for this, saying that they were asked to bring sheets to a cottage, and they thought it was great advice because they realized, that I'm not leaving you with a pile of laundry to do.
Great tip. That caller is a good cottage guest. Absolutely. You should ask if you need to bring sheets and towels is another one. Sheets and towels and pillows even. That's a great question to ask your host before you go. And certainly after, if you're waking up on your last day, would you like me to strip the bed? Would you like me to take these sheets home and clean them? Would you like, that it sometimes can be really hard to do laundry at a cottage, or it takes a trip into town, or it takes them hauling the sheets back. Oftentimes hosts will decline that, but oftentimes hosts will be really happy. The same actually goes for garbage, because of course you have to take the garbage to the dump. You don't often have a garbage collection at your cottage, and it actually costs money per bag. So sometimes when I've been a guest at people's cottages, I've offered to take a bag of garbage home or recycling or whatnot. That's really appreciated.
It's just very thoughtful. All these things we haven't thought about. I want to thank you so much, Michelle Kelly, for your time today and sharing your hard-earned wisdom with us. All the things you've heard about and mistakes that you've made yourself perhaps or had friends make with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's not too hard to learn about cottage guesting. It's good work.
Yes, that's a nice job. Michelle Kelly is editor of Cottage Life magazine. Thanks again. And remember, anytime you want to comment on something you've heard here on Radio Noon, we would love to hear from you. You can leave a message at 204-788-3797. Let us know what you think we should talk about next time. Chloe joins us now. Chloe Friesen, you're hosting Up to Speed today.
I am. Hi, Janet.
Hi. What's on the program today?
So you've probably noticed this. Even if you don't watch sports games, those listening probably know this. You're guaranteed to see an ad for betting or gambling. Sports betting, sports gambling. According to researchers, that influx of ads is working as intended. Billions of dollars are wagered on these sites every year by Canadians. So we're going to talk about a new report from the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse and Addiction that's calling for the federal government to develop a national standard, put up some guardrails there. So that conversation happening on Up to Speed.
Oh, that is an interesting one, Chloe. Thank you so
You're
much.
Welcome.
Yeah, a lot of opinions there. Thanks again for joining us today for Radio Noon. I want to thank the team who helped us bring the show to you today. Dylan Longhurst is the genius behind our YouTube channel today, bringing you all the visuals. We've got Marshall Hodges on studio technician duties. May McKillop is somewhere assisting, I believe, as well. Wendy Parker is our studio director. Our show producer, Nellie Gonzalez. Leif Larson, our senior producer of audio. My name is Janet Stewart. I'll be back here tomorrow for Radio Noon. I hope you can join me then. This is CBC Radio 1. Coming up next, it's Unreserved with Rosanna Deerchild.